Millennials will be unable to ever afford a home based on the current trajectory. There's just no possible way it could ever happen. There's so much debt. There's no good jobs. And the working middle class aren't about to donate their measly savings to the millennials. It's become a complete joke. And while central planners can continue to push the stock prices artificially higher, you can't push an economy upward. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Today we are going to look at the situation with millennials, with the accumulation of debt. Let's begin with this. General student loan debt facts. Okay, let's cover just a few points and then I'm going to show you some charts. Let's look at this. $1.44 trillion in total U.S. student loan debt. That is higher than credit card debt, if you can imagine that. Imagine all those Black Friday sales and the people trampling each other and literally dying on Black Friday to get those sales, racking up all that debt on their credit cards, and then doing the same thing throughout the year. It's not even close to the amount of student debt that has been accumulated. Now, a lot of people scam the system. They use their student debt for things other than their actual school payments. But it just shows you how far this can expand. 44 million Americans have student loan debt, and that is a big number. That means 44 million people are burdened by this. That's what you need to understand. And the average monthly student loan payment, $351. That's quite significant when you think about it. A few $100s a month going to pay off your debts. And that's only one piece of the debt puzzle. A lot of people never get out of this. And that's where I see this trap happening. So let's cover a few points, a few charts. I won't cover every detail from all of these, but let's just touch on a few points. Millennials increasingly delaying home ownership dream. So there's something to say about what's happening with the home prices. And while the US home prices had declined significantly during the recession, you had seen that these didn't really allow more of the millennial generation to purchase homes. Yes, some of them did, for sure. However, they're still priced out of the market. Then you look at an area like Canada, and it's not even close in some of these cities of like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, others. Plans for home ownership. I plan to eventually buy a house or apartment. And a lot of them say, yes, that's the goal. Okay, most of the people say that they want to be able to buy a place. How many, though, said within the next year? Well, essentially nobody. And then you look at this, what I find interesting, 5+ years from now. So they have that dream, they have that goal, but it's not for several years because of their current debt problems, because of their income. Maybe they don't have a job or whatever. But look at this. See, what I see is this staircase here, and that is, as the years go on, they are more likely to buy that home later on into the future. That's pretty interesting because they see it as being more of a dream as the years go on. And perhaps when we get the newer data, we will see this continue. I don't know, but it looks like that's the case anyway. That's the trend, showing you that they can't afford it now, and as the years go on, they seem to be less likely to afford it. I'm not going to read you all of this, obviously, but I just want to touch on one thing. Millennial down payment expectations versus reality. Every city is different. They're all priced different. Incomes are different. The situation is different. But if we just take a few just to look at this, Los Angeles being one, the median condo price, $420,000. A down payment of 20% would mean $84,000 down payment. But the actual down payment expectation, 36%. So you're looking at the expectation over actual, and that's 43%. Okay, these people do not have the amount of money that they need to have that 20% down payment. Look at it, any city. Any city you look at, it's worse than what you see here in LA. Even when the prices, like Austin, Texas, for example, $239,000 median condo price, the down payment of 27%, you're still looking at $47,000, and the expectation being $20,000, it works out to be the same situation. People are not able to afford these homes. They take on more and more debt because if you're not putting that 20% down and you're getting some sort of alternative mortgage lender, you're going to be paying a much higher rate, and you're making that assumption that housing prices will continue to escalate for the indefinite future. That might be the case, certainly could be. I'm not betting on that though. When you see it the way it is and you realize that people have been extremely aggressive with the amount of debt that they have carried, it doesn't look good, because we saw that. We saw what happened with that in the tech boom. We saw people, betting on all kinds of margin, and they went bankrupt as a result of it. And then you saw that throughout the housing crisis, similar problem. You're seeing that now with the housing markets in Canada, where they have gone astronomical. It's not necessarily that people all of a sudden have more money. No, they have more equity in their homes, and they've been pulling that out. So it's really a false boom that we are experiencing. Look at this. How much have you saved for a down payment so far? And looking at this, most people, $0. And it's not even the younger generation. We're looking at the 25 to 34-year-olds, and they're basically in the same situation. $0. Zero. How much of your monthly income are you saving for a down payment? This right here, $0. There's no savings happening. None. That's the reason why people are thinking, okay, it's going to have to be 5 years down the road from now, because I know it's not a small expense. It's a big expense, and therefore it's going to take me a few years to save. I can't do that now. I've got some other things to worry about, but later I'm going to save. Later I'm going to buy a place. That's just the way it is. But later never comes. That's just the way it's looking. Years needed to save a 20% down payment. I talk to people all the time, and they tell me that they are just simply cannot afford 20% down. How can you do that? They say. How can you possibly afford 20% down? It's just not possible. Now, while the first one on this list, San Jose, it's a heavy example here because it's expensive. It really is. When you compare San Francisco to an area like LA, you get a different pictures. But let's just take a look at LA, okay? Los Angeles, down payment, 20%, you're looking at $84,000. The amount saved, $4,000. Help on the down payment, $6,000. Monthly down payment savings, $250. Years needed to save a 20% down payment, 20 years. 20 years. If you're saving the amount that the average person is saving to buy a home, as an example, in LA, you are not going to have that home for 20 years. Think about that for a second. But everything's fine in the economy, I was told. Yet the average person can't afford a home anytime soon. And even when you compare it to other cities, look, New York, Atlanta, Orlando, Tampa, wherever, it doesn't matter. You're still looking at several years before you're able to buy a home. And that's considering the fact that nothing happens along the way and you're able to save a few $100s per month. It's just an extreme amount of debt that people will take on because they're saying, look, I've been paying into my rent for the last 20 years. I've had enough of this. I'm just going to buy a place, take on the debt, and hope that everything works out. But a lot of times it doesn't work that way. That's the unfortunate part. So what do we do? What do we do about this? Well, number one, we have to try to get out of debt in the first place. A lot of people are carrying around this student debt, student loans. How are you ever going to be able to take on even more debt if you got that other ball and chain attached to you? Well, this is something I talk about in my books, but essentially we need to look at other ways to increase our income. We need to reduce our expenses. Think about all the different ways that you can reduce your expenses today. I assure you. I mean, like I said, I talk about it in my books, but think about all the different ways that you're spending money today that you don't have to. There's an extreme example, and I believe the book is entitled Burn Your Mortgage, where the individual paid off their home in a matter of 3 years. 3 years. Paid down their home. Now, they lived extremely frugally, that's no doubt, but they did it. They bought the home. The guy was able to live as cheap as possible. He was earning income in his 9-to-5 job. He rented out the basement of his place, or I believe he stayed in the basement, rented out the top level. Either one. He basically tried to bring income in every single way. Did so, paid off the mortgage, 3 years. It's possible, guys. It really is possible. If you want to make it happen, you can do it. There's a lot of tips out there. There's a lot of people who are giving out some advice. I have some good advice in all of my works. I mean, I talked about it in my YouTube videos along the years. I really focused on it in my more recent book, but essentially figure out your ways to reduce your expenses. Try to then increase your income on the side. There are a lot of ways to do this. You need to be able to try to... Here's one tip for you. If you're paying for a cell phone provider, for example, internet provider, okay? You're doing so at a particular rate that you've negotiated perhaps a year or two ago. There are promotions all the time from these companies. Literally just call them up and ask for the latest promotion. A lot of times you can get a cheaper price just by doing that. Sure, it might only save you $5 a month, but that $5 a month, that's $5 in your savings. And there are other things that can happen. You call all of your providers and figure out a way to reduce those expenses. You're already paying for your cell phone, your internet, everything else. Why not call them up, renegotiate? That's going to take some time on your part. Are you willing to spend an hour on hold with these guys and a little bit of arguing back and forth, or you just want to give them the money? You tell me. Well, anyway, that's some of the tips that I'd like to give. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you will find my books, The Money GPS, and my new release, Global Economic Collapse, even more informative. The new book is about the old book is about the 4 asset classes and how to profit from them, whereas the new book gets into what I was talking about earlier, becoming self-sufficient, reducing your expenses, tax incentives, all kinds of good stuff like that. If you're interested, just go to Amazon. They have a look inside feature. It's going to allow you to flip through the pages of these books to see if you like them. Take care.